right here. Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network, folks. We have a very big show for you. Of course, the first conversation is the conversation that the whole country is talking about, where the Supreme Court of the United States has officially overturned Roe v. Wade, which makes abortions now unconstitutional. We'll be checking in. I want to get your reactions. We'll be checking into some of the women's reproductive rights advocates and more to understand the implication of this landmark decision. Also at the 4 o'clock hour, we check in with the CEO of Teach for America, Ms. Tia Morris, to talk to us about some of the big issues affecting education, from everything from arming teachers to black teacher shortage and so much more. We'll have that conversation. And then later I asked the question, is work worth it? There's in the millennials and the next generation is saying, no, I'm not putting all my time into working. Do you agree with that or not? We'll have that conversation. We got all of that and a whole lot more. So stay with us. It's all coming at you right here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Oh my goodness, we have such a big conversation ahead of us as the Supreme Court of the United States has decided to do another landmark decision. Folks, yesterday we were just telling you about how the Supreme Court stands on the issue of gun control, gun possession, and ownership. And of course, they talk about Miranda rights. Today, they have released the word saying that they are deciding to move forward in overturning Roe v. Wade, nearly a law that has been in policy for nearly 50 years, folks. Now, of course, we all knew that this was coming because of that leaked draft that came out just a few weeks ago, where the whole country and folks trying to figure out what is happening. Now, the big question is, what about the women? So today I wanted to have this, we're going to have a number of voices to be a part of this discussion. At the 3:30 mark, I'm going to be bringing in women reproductive rights advocates and policy strategists to talk about the implication. But for this first part of this conversation, I want to hear directly from you, just to get your reaction to what you're seeing coming from the highest court in the land. So make sure you post your comments on our YouTube page and on our Facebook page to share with us what your thoughts are about this very, very major, and I mean, a decision that is going to shift the political landscape. Now, while we're getting your comments, folks, I wanted to bring some things to your attention about where we are with this whole situation. Of course, this latest vote that was a vote of 6-3, because there is a supermajority of conservatives that sit on the bench of the Supreme Court. It has opened the floodgates for Democrats around the country to say, guess what? This is the issue. The president has gone as far as to say that Roe will be on the ballot in November, and it probably will be on the ballot in some upcoming primaries, like for states that have yet to have their primaries. I want to share with you, excuse me, I want to share with you just a little bit of what of some of the Democratic leadership, in particular, Nancy Pelosi, she put out there, and King Keenan, let's put her quote on the screen, bro, talking a little bit about what she had to say about this issue, because Democrats are trying to figure it out, what's to do, how to galvanize and organize people. She said, quote, "Today, the Republican-controlled Supreme Court has achieved the GOP's dark and extreme goal of ripping away women's rights to make their own reproductive health decisions. Because of Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, the Republican Party, and their supermajority on the Supreme Court, American women today have less freedom than their mothers." Wow. Less freedom than their mothers. That was from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Let me just share with and I want to make sure we clarify this as we talk about this 6-3 vote, that Justice Roberts was 6-3 on the Mississippi law, but there was no abortion after 15 weeks. Remember, there was that discussion about, after that 15-week period, that abortion, how do you quantify, and when will you step into it from a bound of legal to illegal? But he disagreed with the overturn of the Roe v. Wade, so it's like 6-3 missing 5-4 Roe v. Wade. With Justice Roberts siding on keeping Roe v. Wade keeping Roe v. Wade as the law. So we will see. But as of right now, folks, Roe v. Wade is overturned. Let me hear what you got to say. I know there's been so much discussion about this across the country, and I'm gonna just share this with you. We're gonna have our discussion here today, but trust and believe, Brother Roland, you're going to expect him to have a much more in-depth conversation about this evening, and then even going into the weekend and in the first parts of next week, folks. This is going to be a major issue that people are going to be discussing. All right, let me kick it off with so many of your comments, and I appreciate y'all for checking in. Big shout out to my the culture crew online there. Let's start it off with Brother King Lee. King, good to talk to you, bro. Thank you so much for checking in. I'm always happy to hear from you. But Brother King Lee, you posted something, and I think we definitely need to adhere to it. You said, "I firmly embrace that a woman has the right to choose. I believe in life. I believe all children have the right to live." Absolutely. This is, like I said, folks, this is a monumental issue. This is an issue that cuts across so many lines. And King, this is not just about politics. This is certainly about a woman having agency over her own body, right? This is about a woman deciding for herself what's in the best interest of herself. And many folks, I'm sure you know this, King, that many people don't, especially male political figures, they don't know. They don't understand the implication. They don't understand the scenarios and the circumstances by which women, have to make these decisions. They don't know the burden, the pain. So this is going to be something very major. King Lee, good to talk to you, bro. Thank you for checking in. Marilyn Woodward, Marilyn, you said, what's next? Revoking slavery? Wow. That's going to be huge. I don't know. Marilyn, to be honest, I don't know what's next. I don't know. Yesterday we talked about gun control, gun rights. Today we're talking about abortion. Hell, on Monday we might be talking about voting rights gone. I don't know. I'm asking the same question. What is next? Lenora, thank you so much, Marilyn, for checking in. Lenora, thank you. Lenora Smith checks in, and she said, the only right we are going to have after SCOTUS decision and decisions is to own a damn gun. I don't know. I know you're kind of saying that with tongue in cheek, but it's like, I don't know how this is going to work. Lenora, thank you so much for checking in. McCole, it's always good to hear from you, sis. McCole says, having someone or government controlling your healthcare decision is oppressive. Excuse me. Yes, it can be. I think McCole, there should be some guidelines into this whole situation, right? Like there needs to be some boundaries. I don't mind if the government, and you may agree or disagree with this, but I don't mind if the government puts some boundaries on healthcare, right? Because, like, for example, the cost of medication, the cost of service, those things can be debilitating to your budget, debilitating to, debilitating in terms of your life, because they those medical bills stay with you. But when it comes to certain policy, yeah. So I don't know where I would fit on the on the scale of how much involvement do we want from the government versus how much involvement we don't want from the government. And so you're right, it can be very, very oppressive. Let me see what else I want to keep our comments coming. Here's something that I thought was very interesting. Former President Donald Trump. I gotta bring this up to you guys, because when I saw this, I was like, what? He said, in one way, he takes credit for the ruling overturning Roe v. Wade. Of course, he appointed a couple of Supreme Court justices during his tenure. But he privately called, look, this is Donald Trump. So he said he in public, he applauds it. He's like, yes, that's what I did. Privately, he said it was bad for his party. Yep. He said he believes it will be bad for Republicans. And he said that when he talked to his friends privately about this, he said he believes that it will anger suburban women. Of course, that's the group to help tilt the 2020 presidential race to President Biden at that time, and will lead to a backlash against Republicans in the November midterm election. Do y'all agree with that? I actually think he might be onto something. This is, everybody was assuming that the Republicans was going to take over because, where this country was going, how things were going. But then you got this. This just might be the spark that will cause people to say, oh, no, we can't have this party in office on any level. This might be the tipping point. What do you think? Let me know. Let's go to Damon. Damon Blissett. Damon, good to hear from you, bro. I'm glad that you're always able to check in even as you're traveling throughout the country, and hopefully you're having safe travels. But Damon says, look, as a pastor, I'll say it, I'm against this ruling. I believe God created us with the ability to choose. That will include this topic and everything else. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how, and Damon, one of the things, brother, that I've thought about this, because religions, most of your major religions are pro-life, right? They're all pro-life. But how far do you take it? In a day and time like the time that we're living in today in modern day America 2022, you have to empower women. You cannot put women in some dark place to be, not heard, but only seen. You have to empower women. Women have to be empowered to speak their mind, speak their truth. Women have to be empowered to choose what's in the best interest of themselves, their bodies, and their families. You have to empower women. We don't put those same restrictions on men. We don't put those same restrictions on men at all, even though male reproductive health is important. But it seems like the uterus, the womb of a woman is always up for discussion. Whereas for the man, we'll just let him keep going. So Damon, I appreciate you for posting that, and thank you so much for checking in. Let's go. Let me see here. Let's go to, is it Ray Jr. 1919? Ray Jr. 1919. You said we need to start aggregating the Black community to combat all this. Everybody move back down south. That's an interesting suggestion, Ray. That's a very interesting suggestion. Well, let me just say this first and foremost. A lot of Black folks are moving to the south as we stand. There's already that is already happening. Now, are we going to move back to the south en masse? No. But my thinking is, what do you want to see happen once we make that move? Are you saying that we need to flood southern states that are Republican governed? Like, what are we? And I'm interested, and I'm asking this seriously. Like, what would be the big strategy of moving down south? Let me just also share with you, as we're talking about movement of this whole situation, let me break it down to you, because they have already determined there are 13 states in this country that will be ending abortion within the next 30 days. 13, folks. 13 states with what they call trigger bans. Take a look at this. Looking at the burgundy red, trigger ban to take effect within a month. You're talking about Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Kentucky. You got a nice little group of folks down in the South with the Mississippi, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, and Texas, of course, and Louisiana. But look at that. Up there in the Middle East, not the Midwest area, North Dakota and South Dakota, Missouri, they're talking about ending abortion within the next 30 days. Then you have several other states where recent anti-abortion legislation has been blocked by the court, but are expected to act next. So you have those first 13 states, and then you have the next few states to ban abortion within weeks or months. You're talking about Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, Alabama, and Georgia. So you got those first 13 in the next 30 days. This set of states that is going to be banning, looking to possibly ban abortion within a few weeks later, right? Iowa, Georgia, Ohio, South Carolina, and Alabama. And then you have some states where the fate of abortion rights remain uncertain. Those are the states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, those states right there. What else? Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, Arizona, Kansas, Nebraska. So those are some of the top. Those are the states where you're not going to, you don't know what the fate is. The states where abortion is likely to remain protected, folks. Take a look at that purple. Y'all, King Keenan, let's put that map right there. Let's make it bigger because I want folks to take a look at the states. Look at the purple. So the gray is uncertain. The orange is likely to ban in the next couple of weeks. The red, of course, is within 30 days. Look at the purple. Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Maryland. Then you have Illinois, Minnesota. Then you have along the West Coast, Washington State, Oregon, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, and California, and Alaska. Look at that. So back to the point of moving down south, back to this point, you might start, you remember we saw a huge shift of our people moving from those big areas, those big states, big cities, moving to the south, to the rural, to the smaller cities because of better opportunities, jobs, and all of those things. But now look, this right here, this is how seismic this decision really is. It's so big, it may shift the population of the country. Keenan, let's put that one back up real quick. I just want to just drive this point home. Let's make it big, bro. Look at that. You may, if you're thinking about moving to a state, and remember we had a conversation, folks, that people are moving not just to areas, not because of job opportunities or because of the pretty landscape. People are moving to these areas because their politics are aligned with the governments of those states. And look at that. You might see a number of people moving to Denver or New Mexico. California might become the bastion of the West Coast. People were leaving California, but people might be like, because of high prices, gas, all of that stuff. But now you might see a number of people going to Portland, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, Seattle. Then you got it up in the Northeast corridor. You're talking about some of those smaller states, New York, Vermont, Burlington, Vermont, Massachusetts, Boston, Maine. You know what I mean? So you have a number of people, like this really could affect how you move in this country if you're planning to move, folks. That's how serious this whole situation is. That this could affect how and where you move. All right, let's go right back to it, Keenan. Thank you so much, bro. Let's go take the. I want to get a couple of more comments from our watchers, and I want to get what hear what folks got to say. Mike Green, Mike, thank you so much for checking in. Mike said, and now that lost soul Clarence Thomas wants to revisit contraception, same-sex marriage, I wonder if he would revisit interracial marriage. Cornball, we're not going to use that word, right? So that might be up. Same-sex marriage might get striked down. Woo! Woo! Contraceptions, the use of contraceptions. Woo! Teaching about contraception. Woo! There's a little rumor right now that Clarence Thomas is kind of pushing all of these big decisions to be made so people will take less note of what's happening in the hearings, so he won't be implicated because of the behavior and the actions of his wife, Jeannie Thomas. The hearings are still happening. We still got that to deal with, right? Now you got this big decision, and it possibly can overshadow the hearings. All right, let me get a live look. I want you to take you before we take our first break. I want to show you what it's looking like right now outside of the Supreme Court. Let's Keenan, let me know if we can feed into that, and y'all take a look at this, folks. This is happening right now. Decision came out earlier today, and boom, people are already gathering. Look at you see that one sign? Fuck. I think that might be the sign of the year right now. Oh man, I think that might be the sign of the year. But look at this, folks. And let's take a look at it. Look at how many people gathered in front of the Supreme Court as of right now. Look at that. A lot of white people. It's a lot of white people, man. The feminist movement, we talked a little bit about this earlier this week. We all remember. The feminist movement is now on fire in this country. Black feminists, white feminists, the movement is on fire right now. The movement is on fire right now. Folks are still checking in. We're going to take a first break, but I wanted to show y'all. Right, let's keep the footage rolling on that. And I want to Dejima Boutique. Always good to hear from you, Dejima. You said proportionally more rich white women get abortions. I got my popcorn and ready for the show. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the numbers, and I mean the numbers of white Americans versus Black Americans and Latino Americans, of course, white Americans make up the majority in this country. So this is going to affect. But ladies, let's not think that that Black women won't be affected. Someone else said it. Let me see. Who is this? Tiana, I think you hit the nail on the head. This is the same country with the highest maternal mortality rate. Let's not forget that. I think the big concern for Black women will be if Black women, and I'm not saying this to throw shade, but I've heard that this is a tendency that Black women sometimes uses abortion, and other women use abortion as birth control. But this is I think this is across the board issue. Across the board issue. This is going to, someone said should be the summer of rage. This is going to be the summer of the woman. This is going to be the summer of the woman, where the women in this country are going to say enough is enough. And guess what? We stand with you. I was always taught no nation can rise higher than its woman. Once the woman is lifted, I mean, and respected, and we know that. We know what Malcolm X said. The Black woman is the most disrespected woman on the planet. We know that. But women across this country, you got to tap into your power. You know what power you have. You know what power you have. Look, I got to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to check in with Andrea Jones, who is a women reproductive health rights health advocate. We're going to talk to her. We're also going to be checking in with policy strategist for the Movement for Black Lives, Dr. Amara, and of course, continue to get your take on this landmark decision. So, folks, we're just getting started. Stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Verizon just gave us all a brand new iPhone 13.
We've been customers for years.
We got iPhone 13s too. Switched 2 minutes ago, literally right before this.
iPhone 13 on us on any unlimited plan for every customer, with plans starting at just $35. All on the network more people rely on.
Love our new Alexa.
It's a Buick.
Yeah, Alexa.
Buick.
Alexa.
It's a Buick.
It's an Alexa. It's a Buick. It's an Alexa. Coach, that's a Buick. That's an Alexa.
The Buick Enclave with available Alexa built-in.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about this landmark decision, getting your reactions. Landmark decision from the Supreme Court of the United States, which has officially overturned Roe v. Wade and has essentially said that abortions are now deemed unconstitutional. Wow. A number of folks have been gathering in front of the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. to show their disdain with the decision. And we wanted to continue to have the conversation, continue to post your comments on Facebook and YouTube pages as well. And let's continue to have this conversation. It's so important for so many levels. And it's even important for men to get involved, to understanding the plight, the struggle that women face when you're talking about how a woman should treat her body and how government sees a woman's body. Men got to be a part of this struggle. So I wanted to bring in some dynamic voices, powerful Black women who can share their stories, but most importantly, give us some insight about what this decision means and the implications of it. We are joined by Andrea Jones, who is a women's reproductive rights advocate, and she's also author of the book Carrying It All. And also we're joined by Dr. Amara Inya, who is a political strategist for the Movement for Black Lives. Andrea, Doc, thank you again for being back on the show. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. First, Andrea, I'm gonna start off with you, sis. What can be said right now? I mean, you wrote a book about the struggles that you've had in terms of reproductive health, but you have been on the front lines talking about, the value of your uterus. You have a whole campaign around that with shirts and everything else. But what does it say to women like yourself and other sisters in particular when the government makes a very sweeping decision like this? How do we interpret this? How do Black women interpret this?
I feel like we can interpret it by, I can't make a sound decision by myself or for myself. I think that's really what it says to a lot of women across the board, is we can't make sound decisions. A lot of women have been deemed too emotional, and always thinking with their emotions or using their feelings, and not necessarily facts. And that's with our uterus, and it's been said about the workforce. They've shown women from being CEOs and things of that nature within the workforce.
Right.
And so now we're talking about, you don't feel like I'm strong enough, or I have the mindset enough to make a sound decision for myself and for my own body. That's concerning. It's alarming and it's concerning, because in all honesty, we can. And so it's a little frustrating, because what they've now done is said, okay, well, we're going to put a ban on it. We're going to leave it to the states to make that decision, which can take a turn left or right. You have states who have an immediate ban on it now that it's overturned, and then you have states who it takes an effect in 30 days.
Yeah.
And then you have states like Arkansas where it's immediate. So they've already started calling women and letting them know that their abortion appointments were canceled. That's life-changing, right? And so those women in Arkansas now have to try to find an appointment in a neighboring state in so many ways where they can get this abortion. But it also recognizing that we have states that are also criminalizing them to go to another state to get an abortion. So how they plan to track all of this down is mind-boggling to me. However, what it does say is that we can't make sound decisions for ourselves. I don't think, and a lot of people are saying that like white men are making this decision. But in reality, if you all look at the people on the Supreme Court, they're not all white men. So that's another thing.
Right. They're not all white men. And Dr. Mara, when you talk about legislation, when you're talking about policy, I mean, we saw that the leaked draft earlier, like a month ago, coming out, and people was like, oh, well, maybe they're going to change their mind. But they didn't change their mind, Doc. They kept the policy and all. So what is this from I know that the court is made up of a supermajority of conservatives. Are they just trying to get their policies in as much as they can, take away the attention from the hearings, and because they're hoping that they can get some momentum for the November midterm? I mean, what are we saying on the legislative side?
What we're seeing on the legislative side, at least in my view, is the result of years and decades long strategy to overturn Roe v. Wade. This has been a war essentially that's been waged at the local level, the state level, the national level, federal level, and in the Supreme Court. And so it would be, I think, short-sighted to see this just within the context of the upcoming elections and sort of the hearings, the things that are happening now.
Okay.
The reality is, and I think many individuals who have been in the reproductive justice space, this has been decades in the making. This is a coordinated strategy to overturn Roe v. Wade that is actually aligned with other strategies on the right that all speak to or seek to limit autonomy, in this instance, bodily autonomy. But we can't take this out of the without also taking into account some of the other laws that have been passed and some of the other Supreme Court rulings. So this is a long-term strategy. We're just seeing the manifestation of a long-term dedicated strategy coordinated to overturn Roe v. Wade. And this is why those trigger laws are so critical, because those trigger laws were implemented prior to this moment. So many states were already working on and passing trigger legislation so that as soon as Roe v. Wade is overturned, they're anticipating it would go into effect almost immediately. And just as Andrea said, in Arkansas, in Louisiana, we're seeing that happen.
Yeah, and that, we pulled up the maps on that, Doc, just before you got on, and I mean, there are a number of states that, like these 13 states, that abortion is going to be deemed illegal in 30 days. You got a few more states. I mean, and then over the next, it seems like the country is like divided in fours when it comes to this issue in between all of these states. And I'm trying to figure out, the Democrats right now, Doc, is saying that this is going to be on the ballot. They're using this as a rallying cry. The Republicans think that this is going to bring their base together and get people out to vote. But with such a major issue that crossed so many different lines, from everything from socioeconomic lines to political lines, this is not a political issue. This is a human rights issue. And how do you legislate that? How do you get people to see that the woman's body is not a political talking point?
Well, I mean, I think unfortunately in this environment, it is a talking point because, as we can see, both sides are mobilizing and saying this will be the thing that brings out voters come midterms and that can galvanize people. But, fundamentally, it is a human rights issue. And I think we do a disservice when we don't frame it that way, because then it gets sort of marginalized to being a women's issue. And it goes far beyond being a women's issue. This is about how much power the state has to determine what you do with your body, whether you are a woman, a man, or non-binary, whatever it is. The state having the ability to mandate, to override your self-determination, which is a right by virtue of your existence. That is what is on the table. And so it goes beyond just women, because sometimes people think, it's just the women's issue. And then, they'll take care of that, or we'll, leave it to them. They'll figure it out. This is a human rights issue that will have an impact on every single person, not just because of this ruling, but because of the implications of this ruling when we look at future rulings that can happen.
And that's the next question I was going to have, and then I want to get Andrea's thoughts on that. Some people are saying same-sex marriage is going to be up on a chopping block. Some people are saying, the idea of teaching about contraception is going to be up on the chopping block. When you have this type of precedent being made, how do you determine what issue is going to be next, and how do you prepare for that?
I think that's an issue that starts at home. Realistically, it's going to be something that really starts at home, and the importance of contraceptives. I think that we, as a country, we have weakened the conversation or watered down the conversation about contraceptives. But I think that is going to realistically, it needs to start at home. We should stop giving our schools so much power to educate our kids on these things, and so it starts at home, and then it can continue elsewhere. But they at least are getting the groundwork, the ground level work done at home, with understanding the importance of contraception altogether.
Right, and my concern, Andrea and Doc, my concern is, I remember going to school, and we learned about sexual health. I remember having those conversations. You're talking about the anatomy of the body. You're talking about STDs. Now I'm concerned that might not even be a part of the curriculum, Doc. That people, that it's going to become such a cultural issue. You might have some school districts that may focus on it while others don't. I mean, it's going to throw a lot of people off. So can we still have those important conversations about sexual health, reproductive rights? Can we still have that without making it being a political situation?
Well, we absolutely have to. And the parallel is just to think about what's happening now with the critical race theory discussions and the push to ban critical race theory, which is really just banning any talk or teaching about history, about Black people, about racism, that is currently happening again through the legislative process. So laws are being passed in states across this country to have a chilling effect on teachers being able to teach anything about history or racism, et cetera. And so there's a parallel to this. So I absolutely agree with Andrea that it starts at home, right? We have to be the first educators of our children on these issues, but we also have to push back so that the information is available. We know that information suppression and trying to force people to or to prohibit them from being able to speak on an issue or teach on an issue is just an attempt to suppress, and it's an attempt to limit people's access to information and to pave the way for their rights to be infringed upon.
Right. I want to check in now. Go ahead, Andre. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I think that it's a complicated and complex issue, and I don't think that we really look at it to me as deeply when we're talking about it varying from state to state. So every child is learning something different. They get to college across the country, it's something different there. So now they've got to. So we're talking about your general health rights are varied across the country. Where I should be able to go to any patient first and get a COVID test. I can do that across country, but I can't go to college in another state, and I have to be mindful of now I'm not saying that I shouldn't be mindful of my actions, but what I'm saying is we went from something that was across the board to now I need to look into certain things more. The same way we look into the driving laws and things of that nature, now we've got to look into our health a little bit deeper too. We've got to look into our health insurance a little bit deeper now as well. So all of those things are very complex. And again, as I mentioned on the show before, we're talking about states that are also banning abortions. We're talking about rape victims at young ages and various ages who can't get that abortion because you're saying I'm forced to have my rapist baby. But there, I don't know if you all have tracked that there is an influx. It was just like the trigger. There was an influx of organizations pour down money was already just waiting there for them to just push adoption and things of that nature. So it's a whole lot deeper, and only a matter of time before we really find out where this is supposed to be going.
That's that, and you know what, Andrea, to your point, I want to get both of your takes on the cultural side of it, because just as much as about a woman's right to choose, some people would even go as far as to say, well, a woman should be making better decisions on who she lays down with and all of those things. So I certainly want to get your takes on it. But I do want to share something President Biden just gave some remarks a few moments ago. I want us to play what the president had to say about this landmark decision. Check this out, folks. Looks like we're just having just a little technical issues. We're going to work those out in a moment. Keenan, just let me know when we can get that volume up on the president. But let's talk about the fact of the culture, right? Because I think, Dr. Amara, it's easy to talk about what the Supreme Court is doing, what legislators are doing, but often in a moment like this, what the constituent, what the woman or what the man, how they can take personal accountability for their actions, that's often missed from the conversation. And I think for black people, that's the challenging part, right? Like, it's easy for us to look outside of ourselves, but then once you start to look inside of ourselves, once you start to examine my personal behavior, my personal view, right? This is all big and collective, but I'm saying culturally, and we're living in a time where, excuse me, where casual sex is easy. Hookup, some people say that this is the hookup culture, right? We're living in a time here, Doc, where reproductive health is not emphasized quite as much. So how do we start to penetrate through that culture to bring a little bit more light onto the seriousness and the importance, especially among Black youth, to the seriousness and the importance of taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, being very, very intentional about who you are intimate with? How do we have that conversation?
Well, I think it goes back to just the earlier statement about, a lot of those conversations start in the home. They start with our children. They start with parents, guardians, to really build the individual's identity, sense of self, the confidence to be able to have control over their bodies, which means being able to determine for themselves what goes in or on their bodies, right? Yeah. So that's the baseline conversation. And of course that, it's about, what does it mean to be responsible, right? These are lessons that we hopefully will learn as we're coming up. But also, this isn't new. So even in the age where divorce was a taboo and perhaps casual hookups were taboo, that wasn't a time that was abortion free. There were just different ways of going about it, and it wasn't as as open or as on the radar as it is today. So this notion that somehow, even at the time where Black folks may say, "Oh, well, back when we were doing this, or we were in our stable 2-parent households," and but there's still abortions occurring, right? It's a phenomenon that extends thousands of years prior to. It didn't just pop up in the 70s. And so we shouldn't treat it as though if we just, button up our tops more and stop talking or stop dating as much, that somehow that would eliminate it. We have to actually just face the reality as it is, not as, not from a normative standpoint about what we wish it were. I guess.
Right. And Andrea, to that point, there are a lot of us that are still in that space, right? There are a lot of us. I mean, you have your Mind Your Uterus campaign. People look at that shirt and they're like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you mean mind your uterus? And it
mind the uterus that's in your body. If it's not in yours, don't worry about mine. That's very simple.
And it forces people. I think the brilliance of that campaign and of your merchandise is that it forces people to re-examine their personal sentiments and attitudes around sexuality and personal accountability and responsibility when it comes to sex. So adding to what Dr. Amara said, what's your take on that?
My take is we do have to take a better accountability. Like she said, this isn't abortions aren't new. Unfortunately, like I said, we've grown to a culture that's a little bit more lax. And because abortion was just more accessible, it was a little bit easier to just say, hey, we slipped up, let's go do this.
Yeah.
My take on it is really how will this also affect our healthcare system? They love the dollars. So when you take away abortions, where does that take our healthcare systems? Because that's a nice chunk of change that's missing, right? So how does that affect our healthcare? And so for me, it also goes back to like I said earlier, starting at home, really pushing the issue of you have to be cognizant of who you're laying down with, as you should have been already, but knowing that it's not that easily readily available, it's not at your fingertips, or it's not in your state. It's going to make people, I think it will make people take a second chance and just sit back and think about what they're doing, think about their actions, think about the stop. Let's go grab a condom. You didn't bring one, I brought one.
Right.
But not to mention, it also is still scary, because those who are not in a position where they are consenting to this sexual act, where does that leave them? Like, I'm going to stress that every day. We have people who are not consenting to sex, who are still getting pregnant, not by a child that they want to, or not with a child that they want to have at all. They're being raped every day.
Right.
And we're saying that, hey, like, you had the conversation, but somebody took advantage of you. Somebody took your innocence. That's not fair. So it does go back to, let's start at home and let's continue to build on that. But just like, and I hate to compare it, but just how some school districts are teaching about the LGBTQ community, and some are not. Some are teaching about, well, they were all teaching pronouns, but teaching about your specific pronouns, or what you identify as. Now we're talking about doing that same thing with educating them on contraceptives. To me, it runs hand in hand. Like, now we're talking about this and we're talking about that, but everybody's not going to jump on board to talk about it. Just like everyone didn't jump on board to talk into educating our young people about homosexuality, transgenders. We didn't jump on that. So some people, education systems are going to jump on teaching about how abortion isn't readily available and how these options are. Because let's be real, we live in a city where some of these schools are not talking about it at all.
Yep, absolutely.
And so it's gonna be different everywhere you go, and that's the scary part. Everyone's not getting the same wealth of knowledge.
And that brings us to this point, Dr. Mara, when we see so many folks gathering outside of in front of the Supreme Court right now. So many people are organizing and galvanizing. You know, what should be, excuse me, what should be our next step? Especially like, what is the stance of the movement for Black lives, and what should be the next step to organize and galvanize Black people around this issue? How should we move forward to make some strategic gains? This came from the Supreme Court, highest court in the land. Now it's coming down to the states. How should folks organize and possibly can shift the tide of this situation being a detriment to the community?
Yeah, so the movement for Black Lives is continuing to organize. So we have folks on ground in front of the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. as we speak, as well as around the country. They were mobilized for quite some time, even in the lead up to this moment. Even before the brief was leaked, they have been organizing and just developing a strategy to get the word out and to raise awareness. We also are thinking about some of the immediate needs that need to be filled, like what some of the states where those trigger laws are in place, how do we support those women? How do we make sure that we have alternatives that they can get access to, alternative locations that they can go to? We have to really provide that information. And so many of the organizations in our ecosystem are providing those immediate details. Where can you go to get the sort of support that you need, especially in this crisis moment? And then for the longer term, we are, of course, looking at, what is that longer term legal strategy? What are the longer term organizing strategies at the state level and at the federal level?
Yep.
And so we're certainly working on those longer term strategies as well. And I think it's important to point out also the economic aspect of this, right? So the reality is that wealthy people will always have access to abortion. They will always be able to get one wherever, whenever, however, because their money will allow them to do whatever necessary to get it done. This will disproportionately affect people who are on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. It will disproportionately affect Black folks in particular. And so we have to keep that in mind. When these laws are passed, think about it won't even have an effect, because we know that in many instances, wealthy people have been able, and some even on the right, some Republicans, when they have had whatever they've had going on and they have their friends or girlfriends or whatever, side people, whatever you want to call it, to go and get the procedure done, and they keep it moving and still will move to pass this kind of legislation. So we have to be really honest about who this will affect. It will disproportionately affect Black folks. It will disproportionately affect poor folks, while those who are largely responsible for this legislation are wealthy enough to where they will be able to do whatever they want regardless. And so I just wanted to add that component as well.
Let me just say that Planned Parenthood in Maryland has already announced that we have had women from other states coming here to get abortions already. That's already been a thing. So just really keeping in mind how that will impact the masses, that you have to travel from your state to another. So what is your time frame look like for you to get a healthy abortion in so many ways, to get it within that healthy time frame? And so you're looking at that 6 to 15 week time frame. There's one state, I can't remember which one, but it's legal. It's illegal after 6 weeks. But most women don't find out till they're about 5-6 weeks. So you didn't tell me by the time I find out I'm done.
Right.
So we're talking about some women who were able to get an abortion at 6 or 7 weeks because it was an average time frame, maybe, to getting an appointment, to an influx from other states. So that time frame is getting pushed further and further. And at that point, you have women who are just like, I might as well keep the baby and just figure it out, or struggle and then deal with this formula struggle and shortage. So now we're here. So
absolutely. There are so many implications, so many different layers to this issue. And I'm so grateful to have both of you sisters to be on here today to talk about it, because there is a lot for us to take in. But more importantly, this is a huge opportunity for us to strategize and mobilize. And I'm a student of organizing. I'm a student of mobilization, and I'm a student of community activism. So as a result of that, this can be, you could see this as the end all be all. Could be the death knell, or you could see this as being an opportunity to get Black women, to get Black families and Black men in particular, all aware about the importance of women's reproductive health. You can see this as an opportunity to get, sisters who often felt like their voices haven't been heard, get them out there on the front lines. I mean, there are so many opportunities to come out of this, and most importantly, to get people to become more engaged in their citizenry, which I'm a huge advocate of. This is the time to step up if there is any other time, especially for the women of this country. Andrea Jones, who is a women's
Farajii,
yeah, go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Let me also add one thing that we do not consider is the women who are in these states where it is illegal, and them traveling to another state and them not being able to take the time off that they need their body to heal because it's illegal in their state. So now they're forced to go back to work because they probably don't have enough sick leave, or they don't have enough, they can't take maternity leave. Like it's all of these things. So now that's even more of a health risk that you're taking because you're going out of state to get this procedure that's illegal in your home state, and you can't take the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks your body needs to heal after that abortion. And everybody's abortion is not the same. Everybody's abortion process and healing process is different. So you can't get that. That is very scary. You're going to work and you're still literally, and I hate to bring it up as graphic as it is, you're still bleeding for weeks at a time after this abortion, but you can't give your body the time to properly heal because you have to go back to work because it was illegal.
Wow. That's an excellent point, Andrea. Ladies, you just know we're not finished with this conversation, nor are we certainly finished with this issue. But I thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Amara Inya. Thank you so much. She's a political strategist and she represents the Movement for Black Lives. Andrea Jones, who is the author of Carrying It All and is a women's reproductive rights advocate. Thank you so much, sisters, for being on with us today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. Let's talk about education. We check in with the executive director of Teach for America to talk about some of the big educational issues that are facing Black students and communities across this country. So stay with us. That conversation is up next right here on The Culture, on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
iPhone 13 on us for every customer. Current, new, everyone. To show the love.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
How about sushi?
I just had sushi for lunch yesterday.
How about tacos?
Automatic emergency braking, one of 6 advanced safety features standard on every 2022 Chevy Equinox. Find new technology. Find new roads. Chevrolet.
Folks, welcome back to the second hour of today's show, The Culture, here on the Black Star Network. Phenomenal first hour. We certainly talked about the big landmark decision coming from the Supreme Court of the United States in overturning Roe v. Wade. Just had a dynamic conversation with 2 women reproductive health advocates and policy strategists. We talked to Andrea Jones, who is an advocate, Dr. Amara Inya, who is a policy strategist for the Movement for Black Lives. Folks, check out the first hour if you didn't get a chance to, haven't had a chance to get the full conversation and so much more. But trust and believe, we are going to continue to talk about this. There are so many layers and elements to this conversation. We can't just wrap it up or sum it up in 60 minutes. So again, make sure you stay tuned for other elements of that conversation that happen over the next few days. We wanted to switch gears now to talk about education, especially in the, its impact on Black students and the communities that these students come from. So I'm so happy to talk to the executive director for Teach for America in New York, Ms. Tia Morris, to give us some insight about some of the things that Teach for America is doing to address, or to at least to try to deal with some of the big educational issues. So Tia, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this afternoon?
Thanks for having me. I'm well. It's so good to spend time with you today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tia, let's first talk a little bit about the work that you do for Teach for America. For those who may not be familiar, Tia, everybody, I'm very familiar. My wife is an educator. I have friends who are educators. But talk to us, what is the role in the work of Teach for America in New York especially?
So Teach for America is a leadership development organization that believes that every child in this country deserves a right to an excellent education. And so our approach to that is really looking for people who are passionate about educational equity, passionate about educational justice, and getting them to commit to teach in areas where they typically have a hard time finding talent. So typically urban and rural areas across this country, commit for 2 years, and we cultivate that leadership for a lifetime. So that way they continue to fight for equity for students, for young people, for communities that are traditionally marginalized. And in New York City, we've been around for over 30 years, really doing this work to work alongside our communities to fight for the rights of our kids and our families.
Absolutely. So this is a strategy. I mean, you understand, as a Black woman, as an educator, you understand some of the big challenges that are facing our students, especially within urban centers, big urban centers like New York. But what are some of the big things that you're hearing from teachers? Because we often know what parents are saying, and I want to give you the time and the space to talk about what teachers are saying. Because you know what, I'm gonna be honest with you, Tia. I think teachers get a bad rap.
Mm-hmm.
I think teachers really get a bad rap. I think that a lot of people, and like I said, my wife is an educator, very, very passionate about making sure that Black children and brown children in particular are getting the necessary cultural knowledge that they need, but most importantly, the knowledge that will, the rudiments, right? To make sure that they're not just passing tests, but they're succeeding in going to the next grade. They're succeeding in their decision making. So talk to us about what are teachers saying, and how are they dealing with this evolving educational landscape that we find ourselves in?
I'm glad that you ask how teachers are doing, because so often that voice is left out of the conversation.
Oh, no doubt.
I'm a lifelong educator. I've been in education now for 25 years, even though.
Go ahead, Tia. Go ahead. I hear that.
I've started teaching at 2, clearly, but an educator for 25 years, from the classroom to the central office level and traditional district and charter, and now running this organization that really supports across the spectrum. So I've seen it from multiple vantage points, and I've always worked in traditionally marginalized communities like Newark, New Jersey, or Camden, New Jersey, or New York City. And so what we've seen is that an evolution in what's happening. And quite often, we look at some of what I think has happened over the especially last decade, where there's been a conversation about reforming education and what does that look like? When I really believe that the conversation needs to be about what is our individual and collective roles in helping to transform communities. And quite often, teacher voice is left out of that conversation. And teachers are often scapegoated for all of the systemic issues that exist, right? When you look at the gaps that we see in education, it's a result of educational inequity. And that educational inequity, that impacts our students, it's a result of multiple systems of inequity, right? If you look at housing, and you look at, healthcare, and you look at homelessness, and you look at hunger, all of those things impact a child's ability to learn. And when that child goes to school, that teacher is shouldering the weight of all of the social issues of our society. And so that is something that we have to consider. particularly when we're thinking about the impact of the issues on education and how far it is we're progressing in terms of our student achievement.
So one of the big challenges that you guys are facing in New York City is a high number of teachers are leaving the system, and I'm seeing, I'm seeing the number of 2,000 teachers are leaving the system. First and foremost, I'm sorry to hear that. That the teachers are leaving. What are some of the big reasons as to why they're saying, you know what, I just won't be able to do this anymore?
Well, we know the pandemic has exacerbated issues that were already present in our communities, right? When we look at the profession, some of the latest data showed from last school year, nearly 1 in 4 teachers reported that they were going to leave the profession by the end of last year. And that percentage was higher for Black teachers at 50%. 50% of Black teachers reported that. And when we look at what's happening, especially with the pandemic, mental health is critical for our teachers. 78% of teachers reported job-related stress, right? 78%. And, that is 50% higher than the general working population. And so when we think about, what teachers have had to face during this pandemic, think about it. So many children, so many students went remote learning happened. Those teachers had children that were also home who needed to learn while they were trying to teach children that were remote. And then when we showed back up, the level of stress from COVID-related illnesses, from teacher attrition, so teachers retiring early, from the sort of sicknesses and the various policies in terms of masks and those sorts of things impacted what happened in the classroom. Not to mention the fact that young people had been home for nearly 2 years, if you think about it, coming back to the classroom for the first time. So all of this job-related stress, all of this sort of the issues kind of coming to bear has, just posed a tremendous amount of pressure on teachers.
Yeah, I can only imagine. My wife has talked to me about this whole issue, and I was reading, I think it was in the New York Times when I read that students are coming to have to come back, and I'm talking about this school year. I know that the school year just ended, but this school year that we just finished, a number of students, especially in the elementary schools, had to be taught like basic life skills. You know what I mean? From everything from tying your shoes to learning how to use a pair of scissors. I'm just like, wow, like this has really changed. They changed the dynamic, and I know that I'm broadcasting live from Baltimore, and one of the big things that teachers have told me is that, hey, we had to like reteach stuff from that we started working on 6 months ago. Like there is going to be a lag in how children are being developed. What is Teach for America doing? I mean, either locally in New York or across the country to help fill in the gap to make sure that the lag doesn't start to become this rift between, for Black students, white students, and all of the other, like how you plan to bridge the gap there?
Absolutely. There was already a gap in achievement, particularly between Black and brown students and white students and students from low-income backgrounds. And that gap has widened over the course of the pandemic. Teach for America New York and Teach for America writ large, we're thinking both in the short term and in the long term about what needs to be done. And so the reality is I had teachers this year, last year, the year before who were facing students in classrooms and they needed supports. And so one of the things we did was double down on our supports for our teachers. How are we continuing to coach them, build their skills so that way they understand how to handle the trauma that they're facing in a classroom and handle the vicarious trauma that they're experiencing. And so we equipped our staff who coaches our teachers with the skills and extra training to be able to coach our teachers to be able to manage that. We also had to think about, very tactically, what do we do to address the real need that there has been some learning loss? And so what we did was we stood up a program we're calling it Ignite, which is essentially a tutoring program. We don't call them tutors because young people don't want tutors, but what it is essentially a tutoring program. And we leverage technology to bring real-time tutoring into classrooms so that way those teachers have that additional support to help students catch up. Students have additional support, teachers have additional support, and then we're able to use that to give teachers a boost, to give them a lift. And we've also been thinking about how it is we're thinking long-term about partnerships. So how are we leveraging partnerships to ensure that we're pouring additional resources into schools, that we're supporting our teachers and our school leaders and connecting them with some of the community resources that can help support students and families, that we're providing additional supports when it comes to teachers' own sort of finances, right? And many of our teachers have needed financial support in terms of financial management because teachers aren't making a lot. And during the pandemic and with this inflation, things have gotten even worse. So we're thinking both in the short term in terms of how do we provide the real-time needs, and then in the long term in terms of what are we doing to advocate for the policy positions that are going to create the conditions that ultimately make this sustainable for teachers and sustainable for kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to get some comments from our watchers. So as you're speaking, folks are checking in. But one of the things that Real Brooklyn checking in, you're saying schools are underperforming because of parental inconsistencies. You just can't blame everything on the state and teachers.
Yeah,
so, you've been in this for a long time, Tim. Mm-hmm. You know that parental inconsistency is very, very real. Parents expect teachers to be God. Teachers expect parents to just show up at a PTA meeting. Mm-hmm. like there's that huge disparity of understanding about what the role that each person plays in their child's educational experience. How do we make sure that parental inconsistency doesn't stay permanent?
That's a valid point that comes up a lot, I believe, in the question when we talk about, what is the reason that that young people aren't succeeding as much as we want to, that schools are failing. But I think it's sort of like, in a way, it is that sort of perspective is almost somewhat like crabs in a barrel a little bit when we think about it, not in the sense that anyone is trying to keep anybody else down, but in the sense that like we're all facing this sort of mountain, and we're trying to climb, and we're trying to get up this mountain, and we all are having difficulty getting there. But what we're not seeing is that there are obstacles on the mountain that we're all facing. And so we look at each other, parents, teachers, school leaders, politicians, we look at each other and we're all looking for the answer. We're all looking for the other to provide that silver bullet, but there is no silver bullet. Right? We always talk about it takes a village. That has to be more than a hackneyed old saying. It actually has to be a reality. And what it really will take is us wrapping around our young people, wrapping around our families, because tell me, you can't show me one Black mother that does not love their child. So whether or not they can actually be present in school, I don't believe that mothers don't love their children. And I don't believe this narrative that teachers are lazy and they're just not working hard enough.
No.
Neither one of those narratives are accurate. And what it means, what we are all facing are systemic issues that have created the conditions, whereas more affluent parents may have the time and the space to go into PTA meetings because maybe they're not working 2 or 3 jobs, right? Or teachers in more affluent communities may have additional resources to offer to their students. And so neither the teacher or the parent is the problem. I think we need to meet each other halfway. And so when I was helping to run schools, I helped to found a network of schools and helped to run it for 10 years. One of the things I did was think about, what do I need to do to meet parents halfway? Maybe they can't come in during the PTA meeting because of the time, but can I offer it at another time? Can I offer a different way? Like, how am I meeting parents where they are? Sometimes I've conducted some of my conversations with parents in their living room, because you know what? I could catch them before they made dinner and talk to them about the thing I needed them to show up for. And so really it's about us not thinking outside the box and not expecting the things that failed us all these years to get us to where we need to go. Because if we continue to do what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always gotten. Instead, there is a third way. And that way is thinking about how it is we show up differently, how it is we totally flip the paradigm of what it means to educate young people and what it means to work with families.
Absolutely. Belinda checked in, one of our loyal viewers. She checked and said, Farajii Muhammad, excuse me, that's because today's parents aren't promoting early education in the home, ABCs, 1, 2, 3, spelling and writing, math, drawing. Teachers should not be the number one educators. Amen to that, Belinda. Thank you so much for checking in. Amen to that. Now, speaking
teachers,
absolutely. So a couple of big things that I think nationally that I want to get your take on, Tia, because these things are also shaping the experience of teachers and possibly can either be the determining factor whether teachers stay or go. For example, let's talk about the Black teacher shortage that is currently happening right now. Keenan, let's post this this latest data from Forbes magazine. They talked about this. They said research shows that the presence of just one African American teacher in grades 3 through 5 increases low-income African American boys' interest in college by 29% and lowers the high school dropout rate by 39%. Unfortunately, the number of African American teachers in the U.S. has been in decline since public schools were legally desegregated in 1954. In Colorado, for example, 150 of the 178 school districts have no Black teachers. What?
Yeah.
What? Now look, my son about to go to the 4th grade. He's had one Black African American teacher. He goes to a private school. He loved that teacher. And so when I've been reading, Tia, that that one Black teacher can increase increase his chances of going to college, I was like, yes.
Yeah, significantly it does.
So what is Teach for America doing about recruiting more Black teachers, especially Black male teachers, into these schools?
I'm glad you pointed out Black males in particular, because that figure is even more staggering for Black males. Less than 2% of teachers are Black men. Like, let that sink in. Less than 2% of teachers. And we look at New York State, only 20% of educators in New York State identify as people of color, right? Only 20%. And it's a little bit better in New York City, right? It's a little bit better in New York City, where we're about 40% people of color, but 80% of students are students of color in New York City. So there's a clear gap there, right? And so we believe that we have to get more teachers of color in the classroom. For us at Teach for America New York, 79% of our teachers share the background of students. And so we consider that in a number of ways. We have about nearly 65% that are people of color. We have about 60%, 57% that come from low-income backgrounds, and another good portion that are native to New York, that are local New Yorkers born and raised there. And we made a concerted effort as a region for Teach for America New York, but also nationally, to really look at what we are doing to reduce the barriers to entry for teachers of color. First of all, there's the fact that, if we talk about the decline since, you talked about it historically, from a historical perspective, when we think about it, for Black and brown people or people from low-income backgrounds who go to college, they're looking to come out making a living wage. And in many states, teachers are not making a living wage. You know how many teachers who've had to get second and third jobs? Some of our early childhood teachers in New York City, we've had to, in past years, because the cost of living is so high in New York, we had to help them apply for food stamps. Like, they're teachers, and we had to help them apply for food stamps to supplement their income. And so we've been trying to remove some of the barriers, like some of the barriers around teacher certification. In order to get certified in the state of New York, you need to get a master's degree, so be enrolled in a master's program, and pay for a series of tests and things. Think about the cost there. So you just got your bachelor's, getting a master's, and then about $1,000 worth of certification tests and costs. So we try to provide some additional dollars for that. Every single one of our incoming core members this coming year will get at least $5,000 to help support these costs. And if you receive Pell Grants in college, you'll get $10,000. So that way you can have some costs to help you just get into the field. And then beyond that, we're doing work. We've been advocating in New York City for pay parity for our early childhood teachers, so that way they can actually make a living wage, and make a wage that will allow them to be able to sustain themselves. So those are just a couple of things that we're doing to kind of help shape the field. And then we are recruiting. We recruit at HBCUs, at Hispanic serving institutions, at AAPI and serving institutions, and we make a concerted effort to ensure that we are going into communities, recruiting from our local communities to make sure that we are bringing folks who actually live there into the field as well.
Tia, I want to get your take on another controversial element of teaching. Well, let me do this. If we can hold, I'm gonna hold one more question for you. If we could just take a quick break.
Sure.
When we come back, I want to get your take on something that, I just want to hear what you have to say, because this is a big topic. It's been put into a piece of legislation in Ohio, and I'm wondering, can we expect the same in one of the most populous states in the country? Folks, we're going to continue our conversation with Tia Morris, who serves as the executive director for Teach for America in New York. We would love to have your thoughts and your comments, so post your comments in our chat. And stay with us. A whole lot is coming up at the final 30 of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
How about sushi?
I just had sushi for lunch yesterday.
How about tacos?
Automatic emergency braking, one of 6 advanced safety features standard on every 2022 Chevy Equinox. Find new technology. Find new roads. Chevrolet.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Are the only bins that will accommodate larger overboard
They put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you eat 10.
Oh my God.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking to Ms. Tia Morris, who serves as the executive director for Teach for America of New York, as we talk about a lot of things as it relates to the education of our students. Tia, again, we thank you so much for your time today and for your insight and analysis on all of these pressing issues. Now, the big issue that I've been seeing, I'm gonna just put the quote on the screen, and then Tia, I want to get your take on this. Keena, let's look at what's going on with Governor Mike DeWine in Ohio. Let's put that quote on the screen to look at the situation of arming teachers after 24 hours of training. According to the Ohio governor, he signed a bill on Monday allowing teachers to carry guns in class after 24 hours of training, over opposition from teachers and a police group. Backers say the policy will make schools safer, but critics say that's not the case, citing experts' analysis. The new law dramatically reduces the amount of training a teacher must undergo before they can carry a gun in a school safety zone. Instead of more than 700 hours of training that's currently required, school staff who want to be armed would get training that, quote, shall not exceed 24 hours, according to House Bill 99.
Wow.
Tia, so we arming teachers now?
Oh, Farajii,
I mean, you know, we're you know, I get it. Okay, mass shootings. I understand the need for teachers to protect themselves, right? But I'm sorry, I can't wrap my mind around how this idea of arming teachers, whether they're leaving the gun in a safe, or they got it like you're walking around with it on in a holster. Like, what are we seeing here? Is this something that Teach for America is looking to? And you can say yes or no. I don't know. But is this something that Teach for America is looking to address? Like, what is the conversation that you are having within your network about this idea of arming teachers?
So this is an interesting, topic to explore, because Teach for America is a national organization. We're 501c3. We're in 36 states and DC. And as you can imagine, in various states, the opinions in West Virginia and the opinions in New York and the opinions in Texas and the opinions in New Jersey, they're all going to vary, right? Everyone's going to have their perspectives, the various stakeholders, the various supporters, the various teachers, their own perspectives, opinions, and approaches to that. So, they're going to vary. What I do know to be true is that at Teach for America, our priority and our first promise is always to kids. Right. And so we want young people to be safe. We want them to be in schools where they're safe. And we also want our teachers to be safe and to be able to be in environments that are created to support the learning. Right. And so, I know that when I'm thinking about our teachers in New York City, I'm thinking about what do I need to do to equip them? I know that I'm not equipped to ensure that they have sort of firearms training. That's not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is to ensure that they're delivering culturally responsive teaching. My area of expertise is to ensure that they have trauma-informed care for their young people. And so I'm focused on thinking about, how it is that we are thinking about the total safety of our young people and what we're doing to shift the system so that way we don't have to face an Uvalde, so that way we don't have to think about face a Columbine, and we're thinking holistically about what needs to happen before it gets to the level of the teacher or the school needing to consider that measure. Like, what needs to happen there? Like, I feel like there's some systemic levels that we're not addressing before we even get to that level of the classroom.
Are teachers coming to you though, Tia, and saying, "Look, I think we need to really consider some level of protection for teachers"? Is that part of the conversation you're having with educators in New York City right now?
That's not part of our conversation in New York. We're not considering that. And in New York City, we've seen sort of an increase in violence in general across the city. And so I know our teachers are really thinking about, just safety in general, how to be safe in the subway, how to be safe, how to address the increased violence we're seeing with the Asian community in New York City in terms of some of the subway. And so we're not hearing that conversation in our classroom in terms of teachers thinking that they need to be safe from gun violence within the class. That's not part of our conversation. What I'm hearing is like a craving for additional supports for like some rudimentary things. And I think part of this, I saw, some of the viewers and some of the chats, part of this is, basic things like, do I have what I need to teach math, right? Do I actually have the actual resources? Do I have computers and devices? Do I actually have what I need? And so that's the outcry from our teachers. Our teachers have an outcry for the basics, and they have an outcry for generally emotionally and psychologically safe environments, because, there's a barrier there as well. And so I think that's where our conversations have been trending, to sort of emotional safety, psychological safety, dealing with the safety as a result of the trauma that young people faced when they're on their way to school and at home. So that's kind of where it's been. But this is going to be an interesting debate to see how it plays out across the country.
So, and you're right. I think it will be interesting. And I think to add to that, I mean, we have that one level of conversation, and now with the Supreme Court ruling on the unconstitutionality of abortions, how are teachers planning to teach about reproductive health? How are they, I remember getting sex ed when I was in school. Mm-hmm. I do remember that. I remember my teacher going all the way into graphically showing pictures of what would happen if you get an STD. Right?
It deterred you, didn't it?
I was like, oh God. You know, I was done. I was like, oh no, I'm never having sex. You know what I mean? But today it seems like, and our previous guest was talking that you can get one set of information in a school district in one state, and then you go to another state, and those students are completely unaware about reproductive rights, reproductive health. How is that conversation going to be moving along?
I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, I saw that in the last segment, and students, and depending on the state you're in, it will totally impact, you know, the sort of conversation about health. You know, I just actually had a conversation with one of our alumni yesterday. He's actually a school principal in Brooklyn, and he was talking about the fact that he had been a long time teacher, classroom teacher before that, that he feels like there is like a limited health education, that there's a dearth of health education, that kids aren't getting health education, period. And so that to me is the bigger concern. Not, you know, I'm not even sure in many places if there would even be a platform to even talk about and teach reproductive rights, because, you know, the narrative, especially given, you know, the approach of really looking at a focus on testing, the narrative has been focused on reading and math. And so science, history, health, for example, have suffered. And so, you know, I think that we actually need to create the conversation of what do we need to do to even get the arts and health and some of these other topics that aren't sort of tested topics, even back within the core curriculum, to ensure that our young people are even having access to it. Because before we can debate on whether or not, you know, what reproductive rights should be, before we can have a young person debate on that, they actually have to have access to health education, which many places they aren't getting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me just share with you some of the thoughts that our viewers are having as we have these two conversations about arming teachers and reproductive health. Deborah Denard checked in. Deborah, I think you make an excellent point. You say teachers want protection, but not that kind. We want protection of our time, protection from disrespect, autonomy, and time to plan, more money, support. And I think that, and you said this is typical backwards reaction. Deborah?
Absolutely. And I 100% agree with Deborah. Like, and that's what I say in terms of when I'm thinking about what teachers really need, when I think about, you know, like safety, like we're not providing the basic human needs for our educators, the ones who are creating, literally stewarding the next generation of leaders. And so, Deborah, I 100% agree with you. There's some very basics, like we actually need to back the story up several levels and ensure that we are creating the basic environment. And that's what I mean in terms of the psychological safety of our teachers, of our young people. That's exactly what I meant by that.
And Deborah is an educator herself. She says she's retiring next year and can't wait. She's sick of the foolishness. So much red tape and foolishness. She's just tired of it. She's like, I'm out of here.
Well, I'm out of here. Farajii, like one of the things that I'm thinking a lot about, and we're thinking about at Teach for America, is we say we want, you know, it's been our mission, and since we were founded, to ensure that all students have an excellent education or have access to an excellent education. And one of the things I'm asking myself, and especially when I look at now the situation with educators across the country, what does that mean? Like, how do we know we're making progress towards this real lofty vision of one day? And so one of the things we've named is economic mobility, right? We want our young people to be economically mobile. We want them to have access to the resources that they need to create the life that they want. And so that's how we need to, that's how I'm beginning to think about how I sort of pivot some of our focuses, some of our training for Teach for America New York. Yes, we want to make sure that we have excellent teachers, strong school leaders, that we're doing what we can to support the policy landscape to make sure that it's easier for teachers and easier for school leaders. But also, what are we doing to ensure that our children are on a path to economic mobility so that they don't have to wait? I saw in the chat, you know, looking at $40,000 as a salary for teachers. What can we do to create real life opportunity? You know, one of our alumni created this program in New York City and Brooklyn, where we have students who are coming out of high school, they're getting technical sort of certification, and they're getting placed in jobs where they're making $90,000, $100,000. That is what's going to help change lives. And that is how we need to begin to focus our energy. Like, how are we helping our young people not to just graduate high school, not to even just graduate college, but to be able to be self-sufficient?
Absolutely. Best way possible is the one you spoke of, Tia, when you said arm the teachers at a $45,000 salary. Get out of here with that mess. For real. $45,000. And you talking about arming teachers. Best way possible. I'm right there with you. Mike V checked in. You said you got kids coming to school hungry, and you had politicians talking about arming teachers. Priority. Shaking my head. And that's excuse me. That's essentially what we're seeing right now, Tia, is that there seems to be a misplacement of priorities when it comes to teachers and education and our students and our children. As we wrap up this conversation, again, I'm very grateful for your extra time that you spent with us today.
Absolutely.
What is the next steps? What can parents do? What can educators do? I know you're working in New York City. But talk to us about what are some of the next steps that we can take right now that folks feel like, I'm starting to get more of a handle of my child's education.
Absolutely. We must continue to give education the attention that it needs. And again, the pandemic, it really highlighted key issues, key gaps that already were in existence. And it was tough. It's still tough coming out of it. But if we come out of this doing and acting the same exact way that we went into the pandemic, I think we will have failed. And so I think that this is our opportunity to shape what comes next. This is our opportunity to define what the next normal is, as opposed to going back to the old normal that wasn't working. And so how do we embrace this technology age, right? How do we ensure that the digital divide that already existed before the pandemic, that we saw a little bit of movement on with devices and access to broadband, how do we ensure that we are giving our young people critical access to that at home, in school, at the Boys and Girls Club, at the community-based organization, so that way they can be global citizens of the world and that they can compete. They can not just do TikTok, but they can also compete with the children across the world. And I believe that if we begin to focus on some of the partnerships that will allow us to meet the basic needs of our young people, help support families, and also lean into some of the opportunities, like really looking at technology, then we can set our young people up to live the lives of their dreams.
Absolutely. Tia Morris, who serves as the executive director for Teach for America New York. Tia, what's the best website for the work that you're doing?
So teachforamerica.org, and then you can look us up in New York City. We'd love to show you what we do. Come on and visit teachforamerica.org and # New York City.
There it is right there. Tia, we would love to bring you back. Please know that we are a resource and platform for you. So, as you guys are doing some phenomenal things, continue to support teachers, we would love to have you back on. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much for this platform. It's so important to our people.
Absolutely. You're welcome. You're welcome. Tia Morris checking in from Teach for America, New York. Folks, we got to take another pause. When we come back, some final thoughts as we are looking at a major, major week ahead of us. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Love our new Alexa.
It's a Buick.
Yeah, Alexa.
Buick.
Alexa.
It's a Buick.
It's an Alexa. It's a Buick. It's an Alexa. Coach, that's a Buick. That's an Alexa.
The Buick Enclave with available Alexa built in.
Verizon just gave us all a brand new iPhone 13.
We've been customers for years.
We got iPhone 13s too.
Switched 2 minutes ago, literally right before this.
iPhone 13 on us on any unlimited plan for every customer, with plans starting at just $35. All on the network more people rely on.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
How about sushi?
I just had sushi for lunch yesterday.
How about tacos?
Automatic emergency braking, one of 6 advanced safety features standard on every 2022 Chevy Equinox. Find new technology. Find new roads. Chevrolet.
folks, welcome back. We got a final few moments today for the show. And I just want to kind of like mentally, emotionally, get prepared for, what we can expect to happen over these next couple of weeks, especially in light of these big announcements coming from the Supreme Court. So many things, folks, have been happening, especially this week. When we look at the Supreme Court decision around abortion, when we look at it around gun rights, we're in this place in this country because we're seeing something happen. We're seeing a revolution of a different kind where, our ideas and our values and our morals are all going to be tested. And so it's important, I think, that as we see these things happen, that we figure out, well, what's the next step? How do we prepare, right? And that's the part about this platform, is arming us with the knowledge and arming us with the understanding to figure out, okay, what is the current landscape? And then more importantly, how do we navigate? How do we move through all of these challenges and changes? And so, I just wanted to, to kind of play out, just let the situation that we're facing right now with these latest decisions from the Supreme Court, let them marinate, think them through, figure out where you stand on this. I want to play for you just a couple of, for a few moments, some of the remarks that we got from Vice President Kamala Harris around this issue. Keenan, let's play for her what she had to say in response to the Supreme Court's decision around in overturning Roe v. Wade. Check this out.
So as Senator Durbin mentioned, we traveled here today. In fact, they both joined me along with the Secretary on Air Force Two. And we traveled here from D.C. today to talk with you about maternal health, which should be one of our highest priorities as a nation. And I had planned to speak about our strategy for improving care for pregnant women and mothers across our country. And as you know, on the way here, however, we learned that the United States Supreme Court had rendered its decision in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. Here's what that decision means. For nearly 50 years, we have talked about what Roe v. Wade protects. Today, as of right now, as of this minute, we can only talk about what Roe v. Wade protected. Past tense. This is a healthcare crisis because understand, millions of women in America will go to bed tonight without access to the health care and reproductive care that they had this morning, without access to the same health care or reproductive health care that their mothers and grandmothers had for 50 years. This is the first time in the history of our nation that a constitutional right has been taken from the people of America. And what is that right? Some might ask. It's the right to privacy. Think about it as the right for each person to make intimate decisions about heart and home. Decisions about the right to start a family, including contraception, such as IUDs, the morning after pill. Decisions about whether to have a child, including, as Senator Durbin mentioned, through in vitro fertilization. Decisions to marry the person you love. Obergefell v. Hodges. Loving versus Virginia. This opinion also says, when you read it, that abortion is not deeply rooted in our nation's history. They offer that in the opinion as a foundation for the decision they rendered today. In holding that it is not deeply rooted in our history, today's decision on that theory then calls into question other rights that we thought were settled, such as the right to use birth control, the right to same-sex marriage, the right to interracial marriage. The great aspiration of our nation has been to expand freedom. But the expansion of freedom clearly is not inevitable. It is not something that just happens. Not unless we defend our most fundamental principles. Not unless we elect leaders who stand up for those principles. The strength of our nation has always been that we move forward. Today, I invite all people to stand together in defense of one of the most fundamental ideals and principles that for generations, for centuries, I believe we had held dear, which is that fundamental principle about the importance of liberty. To stand for liberty, to stand for freedom, to stand for self-determination, and for the right to privacy. You have the power to elect leaders who will defend and protect your rights. And as the president said earlier today, with your vote, you can act, and you have the final word. So this is not over. God bless you, and God bless America.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris. Many of you, just listening to Madam Vice President about this issue. As she said, the president has said it, the Democratic Party has said it, this is not over. This is should be an opportunity in a moment, a rallying cry for those of us who say, you know what, women's choice should be protected. This is an opportunity for us to get engaged. And most importantly, this can be a major change in this country that shows us that there are forces in this country that want to take us back, and we have to be the force to move forward. So I thank all of you for checking in, some of our new watchers that tuned in today to hear what we had to say. I want to thank my fantastic guests, Andrea Jones, Dr. Amara Inya, Tia Morris from Teach for America, and I want to certainly thank all of you for being a part of the conversation. I do want to let you know, folks, that over the next 2 weeks, folks, I will be just taking a quick break, just a small break. God willing, I'll be back on July the 11th, but I will be taking a break as I'm going to be making some personal changes and transitions. But when we come back, we will certainly continue to give you more. I'm telling you, I can't wait to share with you some of the new changes, some of the things that we're going to be doing, some of the people that we're going to be bringing on. Very, very excited. So over these next 2 weeks, I ask you that you check in. You can still be a part of the conversation, the culture crew, my online crew. Y'all check in because we will have members of the culture crew that will be hosting the show and, sharing and still having these very, very important conversations. But again, it is, that will be just for 2 weeks. And then God willing, on July 11th, I will be back in the chair to continue to serve you as your host. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. As always, this is an important time, not just for the country, but this is an important time for Black media. That's why we ask you for your support each and every day. So make sure that you log on and check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. This is why it is important for us to have unadulterated, unfiltered Black media, so we can have these conversations, so we can look at the lens through the lens of what's in our best interest, what's going to help our people. So to understand the issues, this is the importance of Black media. So just log on to blackstarnetwork.com. Continue to support us financially, because your financial dollars do make a huge difference in doing our job and making sure that we bring you up-to-date information. We're there on the scene. As you saw, Brother Roland was there for the Poor People's March there on June the 18th in Washington, D.C., and for other opportunities. So your dollars matter. But if you can't give, you can certainly let your friends and family know, because we need as many subscribers. And you can download the app for simply free. So that can all be found at blackstarnetwork.com. Also, today, check out the latest episode of Dr. Greg Carr's show, The Black Table. And then on Monday, check out the latest episodes of Deborah Owens' show, Get Wealthy, as well as Dr. Jackie with a Balanced Life. So we got fantastic programming here on the Black Star Network. I appreciate each and every one of you. I thank you again for your time, and I look forward to reconnecting with you in a couple of weeks. Please take care of yourselves. Please continue to do the great work of empowering one another, sharing with one another, and most importantly, being there, showing up and supporting one another in this great, and important time. 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Big Brother Roland Martin is going to check in. Y'all make sure y'all tune in to Roland Martin Unfiltered and hear the dynamic conversations, continuing the coverage about Roe v. Wade and so much more. You can find it at Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, I'll talk to you July the 11th here for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Thank you to my team. Have a great weekend, everyone. Peace.
iPhone 13 on us for every customer. Current, new, everyone. To show the love.
How about sushi?
I just had sushi for lunch yesterday.
How about tacos?
Automatic emergency braking, one of 6 advanced safety features standard on every 2022 Chevy Equinox. Find new technology. Find new roads. Chevrolet.